So much drama in the LBC. It's kinda hard being Snoop D-O double G, but I somehow, someway keep coming up with funky ass shit like.
Good afternoon and welcome to the first installment of the DraftKings podcast. My name is Billy. I'll be looking at this week's slate on DraftKings, Sunday, Monday slate. I'm not going to be including Thursday games for this one. I'm going to look at some injuries first, kind of talk about their impact. Then I'm going to look at players I like at every position, top 10, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, top 7 tight end, and some defenses I like. Also throw in some additional guys I like, maybe who are cheaper or a little bit contrarian, and then some fades for the week. Now, again, it's just kind of a guide to help you out there. And I'll try to give you a lineup at the end that I might look to play as maybe just a base for you when setting up your lineup. So what I want to do first is I want to look at some of the injuries out there, and some are more serious than others, and some, are in situations that make it kind of hard when you're setting a lineup. Now, what I like about DraftKings is they have gone to a different look this week. They have not only the all-day Sunday, Monday slate, they have what is new this week. I don't know if it's because of buys or they finally, saw that FanDuel was doing this and they wanted to join in. They have an early slate, and then they have their typical late slate with the 4 o'clock games and Monday night game, and then of course the prime time with the Sunday night game and the Monday night game. I'm not going to look at each individual slate necessarily. I'm just going to look at all the players in general, and then kind of let you guide your lineup from there. Especially if you're doing the different individual slates, you can just kind of pull from the guys that I talk about. All right, so let's look at some injuries first and kind of how they might affect you setting a lineup this week. The first one is Jamaal Charles. Now, I think he plays. If he plays, I think he's a risky play this week. He's pretty expensive. He's probably, you never know. Jamaal Charles is a top 5 running back, top 3 running back maybe. So he's got a lot of upside there. But, the way Niles Davis has been playing, they might split carries there. He might be on a snap count. So you just never know. He might not even play. So that's one to keep on. If he doesn't play at all, I think Niles Davis could be a nice play. But they're going up against a pretty solid New England defense. Arian Foster is another one. This is a hamstring issue, and him and soft tissue injuries do not work well. It's something that apparently has been bothering him since July, and he just can't seem to get past it. He's a true game time decision, which is nice. DraftKings has the late swap, so if he doesn't play, you can swap him out with somebody. Your lineup doesn't lock, at the 1 o'clock games. But there's some guys around his price range who are cheaper, who are better. I don't think I would take that risk. Now, if he doesn't play, it makes Alfred Blue a nice little value play at 4,500. But then again, there's some really good running backs that for some reason are really cheap this week, and I think you can do better than Alfred Blue at 4,500. Jake Locker, I don't know if he's going to play. I don't know if you're going to put him in your lineup anyway. Vernon Davis is questionable. I think he'll play. He played last week. Vincent Jackson, I think he's going to play through the wrist injury. He just hasn't looked great to this point, but maybe this is the weekend he breaks out. Roddy White. If he plays, I don't know if I take the shot there. He just doesn't look healthy. If he doesn't play, Harry Douglas makes a really nice value play. Bernard Pierce, I don't know. Taliaferro looked good last week. I don't know if I'm touching anybody from that backfield. Pierce, I'm probably just not paying up for. Taliaferro maybe for a value play. MJD, who cares? He's going to be a three-headed backfield with Mr. 3.3 yards per carry, Darren McFadden, and Latavius Murray. So I wouldn't touch him. Brandon Marshall, if he plays, I'd probably fade him. If he doesn't play, bump Jeffrey up. I think if he doesn't play, you have to play Jeffrey. Jeffrey becomes almost a must-play if Marshall doesn't play. And Santonio Holmes becomes a nice little value play as well. I don't know if I'd go crazy about him, but if you're trying to fit in some of the studs, the Antonio Browns, the Calvin Johnsons, then maybe a Santonio Holmes might be nice there. Eric Decker, he just hasn't looked right since the hamstring. I'm not taking a shot at him. Delaney Walker, that's an interesting one. We'll talk about tight end a little bit. He's popped up with a shoulder injury, sat out practice yesterday. Let's see what we hear back today and tomorrow before we really make a decision on him. If he's good to go, I think he makes a nice little play. Ryan Matthews is out. Danny Woodhead are out. They're both out. So Donald Brown becomes a great play this week. He's cheap. He's going to get 25, 30 touches. Also makes Brandon Oliver a sneaky little value play, maybe in your flex spot. You might want to look at something there. I can't promise you more than 5 to 10 touches, but what if he breaks a 40-yard run? So something to keep in mind there. Ingram's out. Bump up Pierre Thomas and Kyrie Robinson. Des Pitt is gone. Bump up Owen Daniels. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's it for the injuries. I think they're going to really have any effect on you setting your lineup this week. So what we're going to do now is I'm just going to go position by position, look at some guys that I like, some guys that I don't like as much, but are a little bit maybe on the cheaper end that you could use to fit in, and some guys I'm going to be fading this week now. Just because I'm fading them doesn't mean you have to, but I think these are guys that, some of these guys are going to be people that people are on. And I think if you want to win, you go opposite of them and just hope that these guys don't pan out. All right, first we'll look at quarterback. My top quarterback play this week is Drew Brees going up against Dallas at 9,300. Now, two things that make me a little worried about him, and I know you're saying, who's already worried about the first guy he picked? I'm not saying that I'm worried about Drew Brees. It's just two things that you got to keep in mind when picking him. He's the most expensive quarterback on the board. Okay, so if you take somebody like him, you're going to have to find your value elsewhere. But as we talked early, and I'll get into it in a little bit more, there is value at the running back position. There is value at the wide receiver position. There's some really nice value at the tight end position. And all the defenses seem to be pretty cheap this week. So you could fit, a cheap flex in there, a cheap wide receiver in there, and a cheap defense. And you could get somebody like Drew Brees in there. But the other thing that worries me is he's not as good on the road. But with that being said, I think Dallas makes anybody look good home or away. I think you have to take him as your number one, though, just because of the matchup, not necessarily because of price. Now, if you want to go with somebody who I think could also put up as many points as Brees, but he's 1,100 cheaper, and that's my number two guy is Aaron Rodgers. The Chicago-Green Bay game just seems to always be a really good game, and it seems to be a shootout. And I think that Chicago wants to throw the ball more. Now if Marshall doesn't play this weekend, that might change some things. But Lacey hasn't looked great. Rodgers hasn't looked great. Just that team in general hasn't looked great. This is a big game for him this week. I think they turn around. I think, Rodgers has 300-yard, 3-touchdown upside this week. So if you're looking between Brees and Rodgers and you're trying to maybe fit somebody in there for a little bit more, you need to try to get Rodgers in there. Now, Stafford's even cheaper. He's my number 3. He's going up against the Jets defense. Now, the Jets pass defense is one of the worst in the NFL. They have a great run defense, but their pass defense is very, very bad. So they're not going to run the ball, I think, as much. I think they're going to go pass happy. Because of that, Stafford could have a big game. Tom Johnson could have a big game. Golden Tate could have a big game. Those are guys that you might want to look towards this week. And for that price of $8,000, I think he's a nice little play. My number 4 guy is Luck. Now, Luck would probably be higher if he wasn't 9,300. I like Brees at 9,300 because of his matchup. Luck's got a matchup that's pretty good, too, in Tennessee, but it's not as good as Dallas. And they're starting to run the ball a little bit with Bradshaw and stuff there. And I think they might get it big in that game. And I think that game has a better chance of becoming a blowout than the Dallas-New Orleans game. So I think there's a little bit more risk with Luck. My number 5 QB this week is Matt Ryan. He's at 8,300. He has the potential to have the best week of anybody just because he's going against Minnesota. Julio Jones is a freak right now. But if Roddy sits, then the upside isn't as high there. but I think Roddy's going to play, and so I think that makes Ryan a nice little safe play there at 8,300. Cutler's at 8,200 as my sixth play. We already talked about the Green Bay Chicago game. I think both those quarterbacks have nice games. I think Rodgers has a little bit better game than Cutler, but 250 and 3 or 302 would be nice, nice for you. And I think Cutler's got that upside this week. My number 7 guy, I think, is probably him and my number 8 guy are probably your two value play. They're good plays for the price. Ben Roethlisberger against Tampa Bay, Tony Romo against New Orleans. They're both going up against really bad defenses. Roethlisberger 6,900, Romo 6,700. They both have potential to put up 300 yards and a couple touchdowns. Okay, they're not going to necessarily give you the rushing yards, but if they can get 2 or 3 touchdowns and 300 yards, that's what you're asking for it. It's more than you're asking for at 6,900 and 6,700, and it allows you to fit in some of those other guys I'm going to talk about later who are a little bit more expensive. I think if you are trying to go, heavy with a stud running back and 2 stud wide receivers, you have to maybe go with one of those guys at quarterback as opposed to one of the more expensive guys we talked about. Now, another guy who's just a little bit more expensive than them, but he has a really good matchup as well, is Phillip Rivers. He's at 7,700. Jacksonville's defense hasn't looked good. They haven't stopped anybody. That offense in San Diego looks like it's clicking. I think Rivers has a chance to have a really nice game. He's got a good rapport with Antonio Gates. I think Keenan Allen rides the track this week. So I think Rivers is a nice little play. Now, my 10th QB, this is a risky one. That's why he's at 10. I love this guy. I have him in every weekly fantasy or yearly fantasy league that I'm in. I'm high on him. I really like him. That's Foles. I'm not high on him this week. They're going East Coast to West Coast for a game against San Francisco. San Francisco's 1-2. I think they're hungry. They need a win. It's not an easy place to play at. Now, Cutler, don't get me wrong, Cutler had a nice game there the other week. So there's the potential. But I think that this is a McCoy game. I just get that feeling that this becomes a McCoy game. And Foles just isn't going to have a game like he did last week. So he's still in my top 10. But at 8,000, I think you can do better. I mean, I talked about 3 guys just a minute ago who are cheaper than him, who I think have better upside this week. A couple of other guys that I like. Now, these are risky decisions, but they're cheap. And again, it allows you to get some of these other studs that we talked about. I think Tom Brady breaks out at some point. I think maybe this is the week. Monday Night Football. He's on the big stage. It's Tom Brady. He wants to, everybody's been talking about how you can drop Brady from your yearly log leagues. He's not a top 10 quarterback anymore. He's inaccurate. Granted, the Patriots have done a poor job of getting him the weapons, but him and Gronkowski, this could be a week for them to do something special. So I think at 6,300, if you want to save some cap, he's a risky play, but he's got some upside there. Now, the other 2 guys are Tannehill's 6,000 and Blake Bortles is 5,800. You're taking a shot in the dark with these guys. But I think, Tannehill's kind of the same situation already. I don't know what's going on over there in Miami with Philbin and Tannehill and calling each other out in the media and stuff. But I think, Tannehill wants to show that he is an NFL quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised against a pretty bad Oakland defense to see Tannehill put up a nice little stat line at 6,000. And Bortles, I like to take the wait and see approach with rookie quarterbacks in their first start. It's at San Diego, but this kid looks legit. So he could go out there and you can spend $58,000 on him and be able to fit in like a DeMarco Murray or a Le'Veon Bell, a Calvin Johnson, a Julio Jones, with him only being 5,800. And if he puts up, even if he puts up only 200 yards and a touchdown or 2, you get your points from the other guys. You got a shot to make some money this week. So he's a really big risk, but I think there's some upside there. Now, I have 2 guys I'm going to be fading this week, and I'd recommend you fade him as well. Colin Kaepernick. Now, so why are you fading Colin Kaepernick going up against just a really weak defense in Philadelphia at home? Kaepernick does not look right. I don't know what's going on there. The offense is not in sync. At 7,600, I'm just going to go down and pay 6,900 for Roethlisberger or 6,700 for Romo or 7,700 for Rivers. or even 6,300 for Brady. He worries me. I don't think he's safe by any means, even though he's got a great matchup. I'm just not spending up on him. And the other one is Cam Newton. That guy just doesn't look right. He's playing at Baltimore. I'd fade him. The ribs aren't right. I'm just not playing that guy. He hasn't looked right. All right. As far as running back, I got three guys at the top that I think if you go a little bit cheaper at quarterback and find some value at the other positions, you need to fit one of these guys in. My top guy is Le'Veon Bell, 7,400 against Tampa Bay. My second guy is DeMarco Murray, 8,300 versus New Orleans. And my third guy is Matt Forte, 7,800 against Green Bay. These guys all have the potential for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns this weekend. Bell has looked like the best. Bell and Murray have looked like the two best running backs in the NFL right now. The reason I have Bell 1 and Murray 2 is just because of price. Bell is 900 cheaper. Is going up against a bad defense in Tampa Bay. Murray's going up against New Orleans, both bad defenses. It's really just a price play for me, to be honest. I think if you have the money, there's no problem with going Murray. I think they both have just been shredding it. They've got good matchups. If you can get them in, get them in. Forte is at 7,800. I think this is the week. I said earlier, that could be a passing game, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bears sort of slow that game down so it doesn't necessarily turn into a shootout and try to get Forte involved. I don't know if maybe they want to be a passing team and so they're kind of sabotaging Forte, and that's why it's been off to a slow start. But I think he's got a lot of upside in this matchup against Green Bay defense that gives up chunk plays. So I would definitely take him at 7,800 there. He's probably closer to a $8,500, $9,000 player, and you're getting him at 7,800 a week. Get him now before his price goes back up. Now, my number 4 guy, it's a little surprising. I'm going with Ahmad Bradshaw this week at number 4. He's got a matchup against a weak Tennessee team. He is now the guy in Indianapolis. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know why Richardson's even playing. Richardson just he's done. That guy is a bust. Bradshaw's catching balls out of the backfield. I think he has like 3 receiving touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. At 5,800, I think that's a guy playing at a $7,000 price tag right now for 5,800. He gives you a lot of cap space, so I like him there. Now, the other guy whose price has dropped way down, and, I wasn't high on Foles because I think I'm higher on this guy. I think McCoy has a chance to have this breakout game this week. He hasn't looked great to this point, but it's LaShawn McCoy, and a lot of people are probably going to fade him because he's off to a slow start. And but at that price tag at $7,000 with the upside that he has, and the fact that he could have a LaShawn McCoy type of game, I think he's a little bit actually contrarian this week, and I think it's a nice play that I probably wouldn't play him in a cash game, but I like him as a nice, sneaky little tournament play that I think some people are going to be off of. Lamar Miller is my number 6 guy against Oakland. He's the guy now with Moreno out. He's looked really good at 6,200. I think he's a nice little cheap play. Lacey's my number 7 guy. Now, the reason I have him here is, I agree, he has killed people the first 3 weeks. He has not looked good by any means. But this is a Chicago team who is weak against the run. He is a top 5 running back, and he is only 5,600 this week. If you can get him in your lineup at 5,600 with the upside he can have, I think he's a great play. My number 8 running back is Donald Brown. Sheerly volume there against a very bad Jacksonville team with his only backup being Brandon Oliver. This guy's going to touch the ball 25 times at least. At 5,400, if you could put Brown with Bell or Murray or Forte with one of those quarterbacks we talked about, I think you're off to a nice little start in setting your lineup this week. Jamal Charles is my number 9 running back. The reason I have him this low is because we just don't know what's going to happen with him. But I think he provides RB1 or 2 upside, especially if he's healthier than everybody's leading on to. 7,400, I think he's a little overpriced. That's why I don't have him up there. So a lot of people are going to fade him, and I don't have an issue with that. And my number 10 guy is Gore, and Gore's going up against Philadelphia, bad defense, 4,500. he almost is a must play at that price, 4,500. I think if you got the space to fit in these other guys that we've talked about, and we're going to talk about the wide receiver position, Gore gives you that space at 4,500. Some of the guys I like, Sproles at 6,000. We talked about McCoy. I think Sproles might have a nice little week. Pierre Thomas, Kyrie Robinson. Dallas' defense, so bad. Thomas is 5,400. Robinson's 4,800. Another two nice cap savers there. Shane Vereen at 5,000. He hasn't looked amazing, but this could be a Vereen week. And at 4,100, if you want to take a shot in what could be a blowout game, it happened last week. They got him in. They got him involved. I think maybe even though Wisenhunt's making up excuses why this guy's not playing, I think this guy is starting to work his way up the depth chart. Could be playing. Bishop Sankey at 4,100 is a nice cap saver. As far as guys I'm fading, Arian Foster, just because I don't know the situation there, at 7,500, I'm not paying up for that. Mal Davis, again, the situation in Kansas City we don't know. 6,200 is a little bit pricey for me there. Bush and Bell, Reggie Bush, Joique Bell from Detroit. The reason I'm fading them, New York Jets #1 run defense. And then I don't really like the combinations of Spiller for Jackson. They don't have a great matchup. Neither one, you don't know who's going to be the guy week to week. And Ivory and Chris Johnson going up against that really, really stout Detroit defense. Neither one of those guys is getting enough of their own. They're sharing too much. It needs to be Ivory, but until that happens, I'm not paying up for either one. All right, let's look at wide receiver. Wide receiver, I think there are 5 guys that you got to get one, if not 2, but you have to get one in your lineup. And I'm just going to read them in order I have them listed. Calvin Johnson, 8,500 at the Jets. Antonio Brown, 7,800 at Tampa Bay. Julio Jones, 8,300 at Minnesota. Jordy Nelson, 7,200 at Chicago. And Dez Bryant, 7,900 at New Orleans. You really could rank those any order you want. Point being, they all got really good matchups, and they're not going to kill you if you find value elsewhere, and they're going to give you the points. They all got huge upside this week. I'd be really surprised if any of them let you down this week. If you can find a way to get 2 of them in there, I think you got a real good shot at making some money this week. I think based off price, Nelson at 7,200 is really nice. And even Antonio Brown at 700 cheaper than Calvin Johnson with the same kind of upside, I think, in his matchup is nice. Julio Jones, 8,300. If Roddy's out, he almost becomes a must-play if you can get him in. Now, the next group of 5, I kind of have grouped them together. I think they all kind of provide the same upside. At the top of that list, I have Alshon Jeffrey. If Brandon Marshall doesn't play at 6,600 against Green Bay's chunk defense, Jeffrey becomes close to a must-play. Maybe even more of a must-play at his price is Keenan Allen, because people are going to be off of him because he has not looked great to this point. But at 5,300 against that Jacksonville defense, I think this is the week he breaks out. So if you want to go maybe a little bit contrarian to what people are going to do, because they're going to see him, they're not going to look at the price. They're going to see him, and they're going to say, oh, Keenan Allen, he hasn't been any good this year. That's when you pick him up before that price goes back up, and you win yourself a tournament with that guy right there. Edelman, I mean, what can you say? Full point PPR and DraftKings, the guy's going to catch 8 to 10 passes. Now, it might only be for 60 yards, but 60 yards at 8 catches, that's 14 points. That's not bad from a wide receiver. Crabtree, 6,400 is a nice little price going up against a really bad Philadelphia defense. I think you can fit him in there and expect a nice little, maybe 7 yards and a touchdown or something like that. And Mike Wallace, going against Oakland at 6,000, I think it's another nice little value play. I really like Wallace this year. All right, other guys I like. If you want to save in that Green Bay Chicago game, don't go with Nelson, fade Nelson, and go with Cobb. Cobb is only 6,400 compared to Nelson at 7,200, and he's 200 cheaper than Jeffrey as well. Now, if you want to try to get exposure to both teams and what I think is going to be a shootout, you could go with Jeffrey and Cobb, and that's only going to take up, what is that, 13,000 of your cap. So that might not be a bad play or a bad way to go there. Kelvin Benjamin at 5,800. He is the guy in the Carolina. Had a huge game last week. I kind of like him as upside for 5,800. Cook's in a good matchup against Dallas at only 5,300. But it's a rookie, so you just never know. Reggie Wayne, 5,200, gets Tennessee. Hilton sits. Wayne becomes the de facto number one. If that's the case, 6 to 8 catches, 80 yards, possibly a touchdown. Vincent Jackson, we talked about earlier. Maybe you take a shot at 5,100. Golden Tate, 4,700. To me, that's a steal with his matchup. If you're not going Calvin, maybe go with Tate, who's almost 4,000 cheaper, but could provide 100-yard, one touchdown upside. Hakeem Nicks, again with Hilton out, Hakeem Nicks is starting to look like the old Hakeem Nicks, 4,600. Nice little value play there. And Wheaton from against Tampa Bay from Pittsburgh at 4,200. You know, if you can get him in there with the Calvin or Julio or Dez, he'll save some cap there. Get him now before his price goes back up. I'm telling you, this kid's special. All right, I'm fading Marshall because of the injury. Macklin, just because I'm not huge on Foles. I just for some reason I just don't have a good feeling about Macklin this week. And then the other guys, because of injury or matchup or quarterback situation, I'm fading Andre Johnson, Roddy White, Eric Decker, Cordell Patterson. Now, if you want my bonus play of the week, if you know anything about Steve Smith, this guy likes to show out. And when he gets put in a situation where he wants to prove something, he usually does anything he can to prove it. He is back. He is against Carolina this weekend. And he wants to show Carolina that that he can still play. And if for some reason he is the guy in Baltimore, it's not Torrey Smith, which everybody thought. So at 5,600, not a bad little play there. I'm telling you, I think there's potential for a nice little game from him. All right, let's look at tight end. If possible, there's only one guy you really need to play and get him in your lineup. He's expensive, but he's going to have a huge game. I've been saying 100 yards and 3 touchdowns. I really think it this week. That's Jimmy Graham against Dallas. Gronk is my number 2, 5,700 against KC. I mean, he's kind of falls in the number 2. With Julius Thomas not playing this week, Vernon Davis banged up, Pitta's hurt, Rudolph's hurt. There's not a whole lot at the tight end position. Just makes him the de facto number 2. Martellus Bennett's another option in that passing attack of Chicago in the Green Bay game at 5,700. Greg Olsen has looked pretty good this year. He's at 5,800. You know, I like him against that Baltimore D. Him and Benjamin are pretty much the only 2 guys they're looking to. And then if Vernon Davis plays, even if not at 100%, he's a good option at only 4,500 against that very bad Philadelphia defense. So I like him at his price tag. Delaney Walker, we talked about, is injured. With Delaney Walker being injured, I don't know. I mean, if he's healthy, I think you take him at 4,900 in that matchup with Indianapolis. And then Ertz at 4,000. That one, it's against San Francisco. And, I've talked about Macklin and I've talked about Foles, but I think at 4,000, he at least saves you some cap space. A couple other guys I like, Antonio Gates and Ladarius Green. Gates at 4,400, Green's only at 3,700, going up against that Jacksonville defense. Gates is good probably for a touchdown this weekend. Green is seeing more snaps. I think maybe that game turns into a blowout. He gets his chance. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a touchdown this week. Owen Daniels at 4,100. I read today that they're going to try to get him as many looks as they got to Pitta, so we'll see. And then Heath Miller at 3,900 against that bad Tampa Bay team. Maybe you're hoping for a touchdown there. All right, and lastly, at defense. With me, pretty much all the defense are the same price this week. Defense, that's the last position you fill in. So however much money you have left, you go with somebody there. They all provide about the same upside. Defense and kicker in fantasy is so hit or miss, and there's really no skill involved in it. You're just kind of guessing and hoping. You're playing matchups. So based off matchups, this is kind of my order, and really any of them I think are going to be a nice little play this week. Chargers at 1, Lions at 2, Steelers at 3, Falcons at 4, Texans at 5, and Dolphins at 6. None of them are more than 3,300. None of them are less than 2,900. So depending on how much you have, fit one of them in. I think they all provide about the same upside this week. All right, lastly, I'm going to leave you today with a lineup that I'm going to use this week. So the lineup I'm going with this week, Rivers at quarterback. I got Bradshaw and Kyrie Robinson at running back. Calvin Johnson, Keenan Allen, Marcus Wheaton as my wide receivers. Charles Clay in my tight end spot. Jimmy Graham as my flex. And the Steelers defense. Enjoy this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Please feel free to leave any feedback. Have a great day. Good luck this week in Grinders.